Hello and welcome to the Super Citizens Podcast. That's Zach.
That's Jackson.
And we're going to talk about superheroes. Today's topic is...
The Flash.
The super speed.
Mm-hmm.
Today's topics are going to be about his powers, his backstory, and whatever
His
else.
origin, yeah.
His origin.
We also will be talking about villains on this podcast, not just superheroes.
Yeah, villains, schmillins, whatever. Okay, tell me about the Flash.
Alright, I will tell you about...
Zach here is our resident expert on the Flash.
We are talking about the second Flash. There are 4 main Flashes, there are more, but we're talking about the second Flash today. His secret identity is Bartholomew Henry Allen, but he goes by Barry. His aliases are the Flash, the fastest man alive, the Scarlet Speedster, the Monarch of Motion, and the Solvent of Speed. His parents are Henry and Nora Allen. They are both deceased. His origin. One night, working late, Barry stood in front of a shelf of chemicals near the window. A lightning bolt struck the window, electrifying Barry and spraying him with charged chemicals. Miraculously, instead of being horribly burned, the scientist found out he could move at super speed. As he gained mastery over his powers, he discovered that he had complete control over his molecules. In practice, this meant not only running fast, but vibrating through solid objects, creating whirlwinds with his hands, carrying out tasks in moments that would take most people hours, days, or even longer.
So, for the layman out there, guy named Barry, aka Bartholomew whatever, because I'm not a nerd, working at a whatever science place, just put some chemicals on him.
Forensic scientist, like for the Central City Police.
The homie was working with them chemicals, lightning struck, and suddenly, wham bam pow, instead of Batman, we got superhero with a speedster.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Something about a metagene, something about Speed Force and Extra Dimension.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about all that. But what I do know is that the homie had a daughter. That's it.
Barry used his extraordinary abilities to take his quest for justice outside the lab, protecting the city from a new generation of costumed criminals. He took the name of his childhood hero and patrolled the streets as the Flash. A grateful city even dedicated a museum in his honor, which was in Central City, but later was removed to Keystone City. It kept getting destroyed.
Did Batman get a museum?
No, I don't think so.
That's one point in his call.
Mm-hmm.
Alright.
But another thing is the first Flash, the Golden Age Flash, was actually a comic book to Barry Allen and his world.
Alright, now I want to talk about this control over his molecules. So, he gained power super speed,
Mm-hmm.
and with that super speed, he was able to... He must be a happy man. His hand he could vibrate his whatever part to such a degree.
His molecules fast enough to where he can walk through solid objects. Yeah.
Something tells me he doesn't have trouble getting what he wants.
He's a superhero, so I'm sure he doesn't, take things that aren't his.
Hey, I mean, everybody's a superhero in their own story, right?
Not exactly. I mean, Joker knows he's a supervillain.
Well, Joker's insane, so we can give him a pass on that. Anyways, back to the Flash.
Okay.
Name some of his villains.
Name some of his villains. Well, most famously, you have Eobard Thawne, who is the first Zoom, more so reverse Flash, also Professor Zoom. Then you have Captain Cold, Captain Boomerang, Tops,
You can all tell that these villains were made back in, the 90s.
They were, but they are still well present today in his comic books. And Captain Cold, I love to say that he actually becomes a superhero in some storylines, even joining the Justice League for a little bit.
Alright. Any other villains we should be concerned about?
Mirror Master, Abracadabra, who else? Heatwave, there's a bunch of them, but most famously, most of his villains make up the team called the Rogues, and they basically team together sometimes to torture the Flash, in battle, not actually capture him and torture him. But yeah, should we move on to his history?
It looks pretty complicated to me. I'll let the nerd explain.
Alright. His history. Barry Allen grew up in the small farm country of Fallville, Iowa, son of Dr. Henry Allen, a fan of comic books from a young age. He often worked tales of the original Flash into games with his childhood sweetheart, the future actress Daphne Dean. He turned his methodical attention to detail and his fascination with science into a career as a police scientist settling in Central City, Missouri. At least that's what originally happened. The Reverse Flash traveled back in time to take preemptive revenge on Barry Allen before he ever became a superhero. He burned down the Allen's house, so they moved to Central City while Barry was still a child. Then he murdered Barry's mother, Nora, and framed his father. Henry was convicted and eventually died in prison. Barry pursued a career in criminal justice in hopes that he could learn who had really destroyed their family and why.
So, I'm hearing that someone other than the Flash has these speedster powers.
Well, until metagenes were really explained, it was thought if you created the exact accident that the Flash Barry Allen went through, you could get super speed. So Wally West, same thing happened to him. He didn't mean for it to, but basically, those stray lightning bolts.
Straight. This dude's dropped one or something.
But one person who intentionally did mean to do this was Eobard Thawne in the 25th century. He created the same accident to give him the same powers because he was a fan of the Flash. He was his biggest fan. He wanted to be exactly like him, even going through with getting plastic surgery to look exactly like him, and created a replica of his suit. He traveled back in time to when Wally West was the Flash, and then went to the Flash Museum and realized that he was not meant to be the Flash's greatest sidekick or friend, but he was meant to be the Flash's greatest enemy, the Reverse Flash, and killed his mother because he wanted revenge on him. Nobody exactly knows what for, but he wanted revenge.
Okay. So, I want to go into a little bit more detail of his powers. What gives him his super speed?
Well, see, what gives him his super speed isn't necessarily the speed forces of what you're thinking, basically. For those of you who don't know, the speed force is the extra dimensional force that basically gives Barry Allen not his super speed, but gives him the ability to run even faster. Basically,
Takes care of friction and air pockets.
Yes, it also, it breaks the laws of physics for him too. He doesn't have to deal with friction. He has this thing that's called a Speed Force Aura, which basically, I'll explain later in his powers and abilities, but basically it keeps him from, burning up. Yeah. Keeps him from burning up due to friction, but also he has a friction-proof suit that he wears, which is really cool. So let me continue on with his history. He met Iris West, a reporter for Central City Citizen. She is the love of his life, and after he became the Flash, he didn't tell her because he was scared of her getting hurt. Of course, she found out before he actually told her. She is the aunt of Wally West, aka the Kid Flash, Flash's first ever sidekick from the first and second Flash, who eventually became the third Flash. They eventually married and lived together for years until her death at the hands of the Reverse Flash.
Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and take a second to apologize to whoever's listening. The vacuum's not our fault. We're just in a not so space we can control.
Yes. So the Flash went through a trial because he supposedly had murdered Reverse Flash. So it happened after he was set to marry another woman, Fiona Webb, after the death of his late wife, Iris West. She was his neighbor. He had started going out with her, of course, after Iris died, and Reverse Flash tried to kill her at their wedding. But before he was able to get to her, Barry grabbed him in a chokehold, and the chokehold resulted in his neck being snapped.
I mean, when you're rocking at a man with over, like, what, a Mach speed, that amount of force can snap any man's neck. Mm-hmm. Superman would even have a choke to do with that.
But he was proven. No, he wasn't proven unguilty. He was just acquitted for his crime. Because, I mean, he still didn't kill Reverse Flash. He didn't mean to, but he still killed him. But he was acquitted. But Fiona did not want to marry him after that, and they stopped dating as well. He was later reunited with Iris, who wasn't dead after all. Basically, what happened is Iris was actually from the 30th century. Her parents sent her back in time due to the fact that their world was basically doing what Krypton did. It was basically self-destructing, but it turns out that their world was okay. But basically, since she died before her actual date of birth, her parents took her consciousness and placed it in another body. Her consciousness was actually in the body of one of the jurors on the Flash's case of his trial against him for murdering Reverse Flash. But using futuristic technology that she had gotten from the 30th century, she helped prove that the Flash was innocent. And of course, he was acquitted for his crimes.
That sounds a little bit like favoritism.
They relocated to the 30th century, the era in which Iris had been born. They had only a short time together in the future of 2957, but it was enough for Iris to conceive twins who would inherit their father's speed. Barry also made several trips through time to visit his home era. Any questions, Jackson?
Any questions? Who came up with this confusing and conflicted and complicated backstory? Who's the man who did all this?
I'm not entirely sure. Hold on. I have
this
it.
Is why we should have a research degree.
I do. I have it somewhere in here.
Hey, excuse us, we're just finding out.
Gardner Fox was the original writer of the Golden Age Flash.
Was he a straight white male?
He was.
Damn, those
because he was in World War II and.
I see. Because women can't make comics, huh?
Oh, Jackson, stop.
I'm not afraid to bring a little controversy to get you.
Then you also had Harry Lambert, who was also a creator of the Flash.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the people responsible. But anyway, so Barry's death, and so he did die at one point in the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline in 1985. Flash appeared to have died while saving the world from the Anti-Monitor's tachyon cannon by running around it faster than he had ever had to keep its energy from destroying the multiverse. This led to his apparent death.
Are you telling me that the Flash ran around a cannon?
Not just any cannon, a cannon using the power of the faster-than-light particle. The theoretical faster-than-light particle.
Okay. Now, are we talking like a regular cannon? Are we talking like a regularly designed cannon? Or are we talking like just a big old open hole that's going to shoot out a big laser?
Not exactly sure. It's been a while since I've read Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Well, did he just run around it so fast?
He ran around it so fast to keep its energy from destroying the multiverse, and eventually he turned to dust.
So my homie basically Thanos'd himself.
Not exactly, but sort of.
Alright.
So these are some of his assumed fates after Crisis, because nobody actually knew what happened to him.
Like fucking dead.
According to Secret Origins Annual Number 2, Barry was transformed into electricity as he went back in time, eventually becoming the lightning bolt that hit his lab, splashing his past self with charged chemicals and transforming him into the Flash.
That's a self-fulfilling prophecy if I've ever heard one.
Mm-hmm. Then you have another one. Marvel Comics got into the act in 1990 with Quasar number 17, in which a blonde amnesiac in the tatters of a red outfit appeared in the middle of a super speed race and outran all the contestants. The host asked his name. He replied, "I'm not sure. Buried Allen," something like that. The race's host replied, "Well, Buried, how does it feel to be the fastest man alive?" And he said, "It feels right." A few years later, a follow-up story appeared in Quasar number 58. By this time, Buried Alien had taken the name Fast Forward and decided to make the most of his life, even though he knows he's not in a universe not his own. And anything else?
Well, I guess we should continue on to talk about his powers.
Well, I have one more supposed fate, which is what the actual fate of him was. If you actually read all the way through to Final Crisis, but
Let's hear it.
if you had any questions. Okay. The terminal velocity storyline established the idea of the Speed Force as a Valhalla for speedsters. It was strongly implied that Barry had joined with the source of his powers and the spirits of speedsters from throughout the ages. This was followed up on in Flash Annual Number 11, in which Johnny Quick is able to return and say goodbye to his daughter and mention he's spoken to Barry. And in Flash Number 150, which shows Barry, Wally, Johnny Quick, and many other speedsters as part of the Speed Force. Finally, Impulse number 82 showed Max Mercury communing with the spirits of the Speed Force, including Johnny Quick and Barry. These are only a few of his apparent fates. There are, I think, 2 others, but I didn't want to make this too long and too confusing for people.
Yep, I'm confused, and I'm the one who's supposed to be knowing this. Alright,
So-
what about the powers?
Not on to the powers yet,
I would like to
Jackson.
know about the powers.
Oh well, we're talking about his resurrections now.
Not for resurrection.
So you have the Flash's false resurrection, which, while the Flash was dead, Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, disguised himself as Barry, making not just the people of Central City believe he was the Flash, but also his allies, such as Wally West, Max Mercury, and Johnny Quick. Thawne eventually went on a crime spree, beating Wally and the other speedsters badly, even almost making Wally quit being a hero because he thought it was Barry, and he thought that Barry thought he wasn't capable of being a superhero. But eventually, Wally found a journal, which was Iris's journal, which had a detailed history of the Flash. Found out that the fake Barry wasn't actually Barry, it was Eobard Thawne, and they all took Thawne down. And Thawne also, nobody knew what happened to him after that.
Alright.
His actual resurrection, the Flash's actual resurrection, is he was brought out of the Speed Force during Final Crisis, and he did not know why. He was also wearing a black suit, and if he touched any other speedster, he killed them. Basically, he later ran back into the Speed Force, and he found out that it was Eobard Thawne's plot to create his own version of the Speed Force, the negative Speed Force, which steals power from the Speed Force. But anyway, he was inside of Barry, sort of, his energy was, but then running back into the Speed Force basically shot that energy out of him and created the negative Speed Force. Now, Jackson, we will move on to his powers and abilities. Which would you like to tell everybody his powers and abilities? Or would you like me to?
Why not? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, in my notes, which I was so graciously provided by this fountain, let's go with waterfall of information. One of them is the Speed Force conduit. After Barry was struck by a lightning bolt and doused
with chemicals.
with chemicals. It created the Speed Force, a mysterious cosmic force that pushes time and space towards itself. As it does this, Speed Force creates excess energy that builds up and needs to be released. The Flash is effectively the Speed Force release valve. When Barry uses his powers, he taps into that built-up energy and expends it. Barry is a master of the science of speed. For this seems like some actual BS.
It's not.
Alright. He has superhuman speed, stamina, reflexes, strength, and durability, because if you're running at Mach 20, you kind of want to have that, because your arm might, fly off.
Also,
casually.
this is the Speed Force aura, which I told you, I explained to you, Jackson. So the Speed Force aura, the Flash's body, is surrounded by a friction cushion, a field of kinetic absorbent energy that protects him and anyone who is running with or carried by him from the rigorous effects of using his speed, including friction, airborne particulate matter, heavy impact, and G-force. And yeah,
Impressive.
basically, in the latest episode, in the first episode of season 6 of the TV show The Flash, he ran into a black hole which had massive G-force onto his body, but his Speed Force aura kept him from being crushed.
So basically, my homie got to experience the event horizon without the, shattering of molecules into little bitty pieces.
Basically.
Alright.
Would you like to continue on?
Why not? He's accelerated healing, because, accelerated healing. He can create vortexes by rotating his arms at super speed, so basically homie has tornadoes on command.
Mm-hmm.
He can generate enough Speed Force energy to throw lightning. Zeus isn't going to be happy about that. And also, those giants worked hard on those lightning bolts. You stop that. Fast forward. Ooh, that's the whatever that is.
What? Dimensional travel. If he runs fast enough and manipulates the frequency of his body, he can travel to another dimension.
I'm sorry, but that seems like some bullshit.
That's not, Jackson.
Traveling to a different dimension? Look, I travel to a different dimension every time I go to sleep and get up, but come on. There are limits to what a man can do.
Time travel. But he can time travel, but he has to use this treadmill, which he created called the Cosmic Treadmill, which is way better than any treadmill because it keeps up with Barry's speed. And a man traveling at light speed, that's pretty hard to do. But, so, he can't precisely do it without the Cosmic Treadmill, or he'll jump through time. But the third Flash, which is Wally West, who I touched up on a little bit ago, basically he can accurately time travel without the Cosmic Treadmill.
So, time travel with help.
Basically.
Okay. He can vibrate his vocal cords to change his voice for when he's talking to someone he knows.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a Batman voice modifier without the Batman.
He can change his frequency to that of any object to run through it.
That makes so much more sense than what you said.
But eventually, Wally West, who was also able to do this because he also had super speed, basically, whenever at a certain point, whenever he would do it, he started to make, objects explode. Possibly because he made the particles in it too unstable and caused them to explode.
So on top of just being able to, go through objects, he can just explode things.
No, see, whenever Wally West, after a certain point, whenever he tried to run through them, if he ran through them, basically he would make their particles unstable inside of them, and he would make it explode because he was making the particles go too fast.
That sounds like a super villain power, because they could just run through a person and they go...
Yeah, he could, but I'm sure Wally can take precautions to not do that. Reality alteration. Basically, by preventing events in the past while time traveling, Barry can unintentionally alter the present day reality, and yeah.
Very impressive.
A perfect example of this is Flashpoint, which was a version of the timeline where Barry had gone back in time to save his mother from being killed.
Mm-hmm. He has enhanced senses. He could have just said superior. The Speed Force grants Barry enhanced senses that allow him to perceive the world at a rate attuned to his reaction speed. So he got Captain Americanized.
Basically.
That's impressive.
Jackson, this next one may upset you because you're probably gonna be like, that's actual BS, but
I'm throwing this computer out a window. Get this out.
Barry can achieve aerial locomotion either by creating cyclones or spinning his body like a propeller. Like his nephew Wally, Barry's capable of running in the frictionless vacuum of space/time, or even from beyond the life barrier without need of solid surface to run along. So basically this says he can run in space without having anything under him. How do you feel about that, Jackson?
I feel like the Speed Force is too OP. Get Superman in here. We need Wally West dead.
You should have heard the other thing where it's just like, if a speedster basically throws his molecules fast enough in a different direction, he's able to go like all the way to the other side of the universe instantaneously.
So, negative anti-life equation. Barry is capable of negating the effects of Darkseid's anti-life
equation.
What is that?
Basically, Darkseid has a anti-life equation that can literally kill anything except for a few things, which includes Barry through his contact with the Speed Force. Enhanced mental process. Barry's mental capacities are greatly enhanced by the Speed Force, allowing him to think at the speed of light and perceive events that last less than an attosecond. He is also capable of reading at superhuman rates, accumulating mass amounts of knowledge in seconds. However, unlike his grandson, the knowledge does not stay in his memory very long and disappears after a short time. So basically, this man can pass the test with an A if he's got the book. He can just go through the book in like a few seconds, go through it.
Alright, that's Gucci. So, thinking at the speed of light. That doesn't sound like an actual term.
Oh, no, it definitely is.
The speed of light is...
being able to think, basically, imagine everything around you is going slower. Imagine there's a nuke that just gets dropped, and everything's just going really slow. And he can, like, see everything around him going slow. And this is a perfect example of something like this. Is once Wally West, he ran back and forth from a city to this field outside of it because there was a nuke that was being dropped on it, and it was like 200,000 miles between the city and that, and he had like a few thousand people to save, and he ran that back and forth before the nuke even dropped.
That's pretty impressive.
And that was a few seconds. Yeah, man, it's pretty fast.
Yeah, that's super duper fast. Anything else you want to touch on?
I don't know. Do you wanted me to touch on the Speed Force earlier? I can talk about the Speed Force for a little bit.
Let me do something first.
All right.
So, if I had to rate this superhero, scale 1 to 10, 1 being what, Captain Freeze, and 10 being, I don't know, who's your favorite?
My favorite is the Flash.
10 being
the Flash.
Let's go with Magneto.
Magneto's not that good.
Magneto's pretty dope. Okay, let's go with Superman as the top standard and Batman as the bottom standard.
Excuse me, sir? Superman should be the bottom standard. We're not getting into this, though, right now.
Alright, look, scale of 1 to 10.
We have
the best 10.
We only have about 2 minutes left on this, Jackson. We're not getting into it.
No, I need to rate him.
Alright, so 1 to
solid 7.
To me, Flash is a solid 10 because he's my favorite, though. Honestly, I wish I was wearing my Flash tee. Also, the episode of Flash comes on tonight, which is going to be great.
Sorry for that.
Sorry.
As you can tell,
Disregard the bell, please. Disregard the bell.
we are school children. Very sorry.
But anyway, so yeah, basically, is that all you wanted to talk about today, Jackson? Honestly, we could do the Speed Force in a whole nother episode.
God, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but Jackson, it's gonna be fun because we still have to talk about all the other speedsters and the villains.
Alright, look, next time we'll go over some of the Flash's villains.
No, next time On the next episode, we're going over Doctor Strange.
Oh, hell yes. And I will give you an in-depth magical analysis. I got you.
Jackson is a Doctor Strange fanatic from
Not
what I
even
hear.
a Doctor
And
Strange
you guys
fanatic.
will love it.
I like
So,
magic.
Thank you for listening.
Oh, yes,
on
thank you for
this.
tuning in.
And this has been the Super Citizen Podcast.
Little word to our sponsor before we go.
We don't have a sponsor.
I have a sponsor.
Who's your sponsor?
Miss Duke.
Oh, Miss Duke is
Miss
pretty
Duke.
much our sponsor.
Room.
Yeah, Mrs. Duke's our favorite teacher. We're totally not saying this because this is a project for her class, and we're trying to get an A.
She's a dope teacher.
She is. She's best teacher.
The fact that she didn't even try and consult the librarian before sending us was a little bit of a but
anyway, this has been a great first episode, in my opinion, Jackson.
great.
Totally didn't take us 4 or 5 times to get this right.
What? Well, it was like 7.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Peace.
Peace. Where one of us accidentally